Thanks, Mark. This is the good news portion of the presentation. And the good news is we're almost done talking, so we can get on to our panel, who I'm sure are going to have some interesting data for us. I think this is a kind of an intriguing slide because what we're seeing is that there is a transformation taking place in trust. And if you look on the left, the old trust framework was really one of control. What I was calling a return to the conversation. If you think about how we communicated in the past, it was really a dialogue. And I think that we drifted away from that, quite frankly, both in politics and in the business arena, and went to one of more of a monologue, which is the model you see on the left. But with the new tools that are available to us, the fact that we're overloaded with information and conversation on a daily basis, it really does require engagement. I think the other point is to keep in mind is, trust no longer occurs in a vacuum. There's many influences from outside, whether it's media, NGOs, business, etc., and of course politics. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is trust is fluid. And if you look, for example, what's going on in the U.S., Mark talked about, sort of the Obama factor, and as everyone knows, Obama swept into power and he could do no wrong, and we soon found out that there's an opposition party out there, and things got pretty rough for the president. And I think that was manifested in the midterm elections, of course, where the Republicans gained control of the House. But it's interesting that you have little incidents that occur that can sort of shift the whole issue of trust. Now, if you look at what's happening with the president right now in the U.S., he's had a tremendous bounce. His scores are back up. The economy's coming back technically. The stock market's back. Business is spending money, but we're still in a jobs quandary back in the States, much like you are here. But the recent incident in Tucson a few weeks ago, the tragic incident where Congresswoman Gifford was shot, really actually provided an opportunity for the president to sort of rally the troops, if you will. And if you look at his scores today, he's up in the mid-50s, which is quite good, considering that he had some of his lower scores. And I think it was all about instilling trust once again. And I think that he did a good job of that. It's a long way to the election, so we'll see what happens moving forward. I think the other thing, if you look at the data globally, we have found there's a direct correlation between economic performance and trust levels. When times are good, trust tends to be up in countries. Except this year we saw an interesting dichotomy in the States. What we had done over the past years was we tracked our trust scores over the last 10 years with the S&P 500. And what we saw is when the S&P 500 was up, so was trust. Now we're not sure which was driving which. But this year what was interesting is the stock market has raged back in the US, but the trust scores in the US are lower than ever. So it's really interesting what's occurring there, and it just shows that trust has many influences, and we're still trying to figure all of that out. I think this chart is one of the most important charts that we have in the presentation. And the reason being is I think what it shows, I believe the opening comment, somebody talked about trust as currency. And I think this really reinforces that. And the point here is that there is a cost associated with trust. If you look at the left, 55% will believe negative information about your organization if they hear it one or two times, if they have low trust in you. Conversely, on the right, if they have trust in you, you only have to say something once or twice to get their attention. And then if you look at the small blue and red triangles on each side, you see that it's basically, if there's distrust in your organization, it's much tougher to get people to gain trust in you. I think this is compounded by the fact that the Pew Foundation just came out with some research, and what they said is that the average individual now has access to 8 sources of information in the course of their daily business. It used to be you get up in the morning, you would read the local newspaper and maybe watch what's on TV. But we're inundated with information, so that's both a plus and a minus. But it really does provide both an opportunity and a challenge to getting out there and repeating your message over and over. And linked to that, the other thing we found out is when we look at informed publics, they need to hear something in general, not if they trust or distrust you, 3 to 5 times for them to believe it. So there's, as I said, we have this absolute explosion of opportunities to communicate with people, but you've got to be out there saying it over and over again. You can no longer run the 30-second or 60-second spot and hope that that saves the day. I refer to this slide as the Newton's Law slide because I think it was, my Catholic upbringing served me well. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, and I think that holds true here as well. We talk about trust as a form of currency, and I think this really holds true. The thing that's interesting, as you can see, if you're trusted on the right, what people will do, they'll buy your products, they'll recommend it to their colleagues. The third one there, where almost 70%, 7 out of 10 people say they'll actually pay a little bit more for your product if they trust you. I was talking earlier to Jere about this, and I said I would caveat that a bit because I think sometimes when we do this research, we're dealing with informed publics. These are people that are in the know, so to speak. And I think sometimes they tell you what they think you want to hear. So I caveat all of the results with that, but I think that's still an interesting finding there. So when we look at, as we've been talking about multiple sources of trust, what we really believe is that you as individuals, as organizations, actually have to build a trust portfolio. And in that portfolio, you need to have 4 key groups. You have to have the experts, the academics, which I think Mark pointed to, which are still critical in gaining trust or supporting trust in your organization. They're still the most respected and trusted source of information, third parties, the technical experts, the analysts, etc. Your media. And when we talk about media, we think it falls into 4 groups. There's traditional media, there's the quote-unquote new media, there's social media, which we're all engaged in now, but I think the other one is the owned media. And Mark talked about being your own media company, and I think that's critical when you're thinking about building that trust portfolio. Obviously, there's the community, and I think it's the community at large, and then there's the community in which you operate, people like yourselves that you're dealing with, and our respected leaders, which, depending on what day you do this research, some are more respected than others, as we see in the unforgiving world of politics. So I think in closing, when we look at trust and we look at it globally, and we believe that there's a prescription for addressing trust. I think ultimately what it comes down to in the business that we're in communications and public affairs, there's 4 key questions that need to be answered if you're trying to build trust. And I think it's, first of all, what do I say? What are my messages? Who do I say it to? Who's the community that really is important to me? How do I go about delivering it? And then how do I show value? How do I show that you can actually measure results? And at Edelman, we're just big believers in this, and we've put in place, I won't walk through all of those, but products and systems, and really a theory around how you go about building trust. And we think that we're onto something. We, of course, would always love to share that with you. But so I just want to end on that sort of a positive note that, as you look at these scores over 11 years, it really is a bit like an EKG, and it goes up and down. And I hope that if I'm fortunate enough to be here next year to present to you, we'll see the trust scores soaring a little bit higher for Ireland. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Jim and to the esteemed panel. Thank you very much.